I went through another cycle like this, a different one, where I really changed the way that I was approaching my life and my work. But that time it was so much faster. I was only in it for a few months before I really broke through to the other side and felt like, oh, I'm emerging, right? I can see where I'm going and what this is all about. And I realized, oh, by knowing the steps that are happening here, it can speed up the process and you don't have to get stuck there for so long.
Welcome to The Way of the Muse, a podcast for women who want to create richness in every area of their lives, from business and career to lifestyle, relationships, family, purpose, and fulfillment. I'm Gigi Sage.
And I'm McKenna Sage. We're a mother-daughter coaching team, and combined, we've spent over 4 decades helping people create their best and most fully expressed lives. If you're ready to step into your bigger dreams with ease, fun, and flow, you're in the right place. Let's get into the episode.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is Gigi.
We are so excited to be back with you doing a fun topic today. We're going to talk about reinvention, the art of transforming yourself. So, Gigi, I love this theme, as you know, and I feel like you have been the queen of reinvention for as long as I can remember.
Absolutely. This is one of my most fun things to do in life is reinvent myself. I've done it many, many, many times. And
can't wait to have you share some of those stories on the podcast today.
Yeah. Definitely will do that. Yeah. And I also have watched you have quite a passion for this. You've done it for yourself, and then I've watched you do it with so many clients. And I'm just curious, when do you see this theme of reinvention come up for people? Because I think that would be great for our listener, because sometimes I think people are scared to reinvent themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've really seen that it kind of happens one of two ways. Sometimes we choose to reinvent ourselves, and then other times the change is sort of thrust upon you, so to speak. So about a year ago, when I first developed something I call the rebirth roadmap, I really put a lot of thought into this because I was looking at the times when I had really had these kind of, at the time I was really calling them death and rebirth cycles, but these reinvention times, like going into the cocoon and coming out the other side, a different version of yourself. And I realized that sometimes we choose that, right? We go I feel that call to something more, or something needs to change. And then other times something happens in our life, like they move across the country and they reinvent themselves, or they have a divorce, or they have some big outside circumstances that create this sort of, they call them into a reinvention. And so I'm really passionate about this topic because as I've gone through this multiple times in my life, I just love rediscovering who I am, like that I'm not the person I thought I was. And this is really a lot to do also with the woman you're stepping into, which is a lot of the work that I do and we do with women. Is I started seeing that when we would coach people, and you taught me this, Gigi, how to see in this way. But when I would be working with someone, they would be talking and I would see like almost a glimpse of a future version of that person, like who they wanted to be in the life that they were going to step into in their next chapter. And so I just started reflecting that back to them and saying what I saw and asking if it resonated. And they'd be like, oh my God, that's so right on. I'm so glad you put words to something that I was feeling. Do you have that experience, Gigi, I'm sure you do, because I learned it from you when you're coaching people?
Yes, I do. And as you said, I think that shared that with you early on in your coaching journey as you were learning, is that sitting back, we call it like sitting in the seat of the coach, and just allowing yourself to be super receptive and listening to people in such a way. And as you said, I think different people see it in different ways, but you almost see like a vision of someone. You see the real them come out sometimes, which is amazing, right? And
I love that you put it that way, the real them, because it is really even a more real version of them than the one that's there right now. It's like who they really are.
And that's what we do so much with people, is to help them get to that person they're meant to be, the person that's underneath maybe their stories, their personality, all these things that they've kind of added up on top of who they are. So I think that your piece of the woman you're stepping into has been such a powerful shift for a lot of women, because it allows them to tap into something that normally maybe they would feel a little hesitant or a little scared or embarrassed or whatever. But when you take it from that framework of who is the woman you're stepping into, that's just feels so exciting. It feels super exciting. And I love too when we can almost give our listener a reframe of when you are going through, like you said, if life thrusts a situation on you, right? And you have no choice but to have this kind of rebirth, then to reframe it that it is a rebirth, instead of that, even though you have to feel the feelings. If you're going through a divorce, it's a very challenging thing, and feel those feelings, but also get excited about it's an opportunity to step in more into the life that you're meant to be living and become more of the person that you want to become.
That's such a great way of looking at it. It could be a divorce, it could be a job loss, whatever it is, that you can sort of feel like powerless in that situation some of the time if it's not something that you chose. But when you look at how do I want to reinvent myself? Who is the woman I'm stepping into? Then it almost does give you this way to kind of take some power back and to have ownership in the situation around, okay, I can't control what's happening here, or maybe I didn't choose it necessarily, but I can choose how I respond to it and who I become as a result of it. And the first time, I always love to tell the story of the first time I really saw this in a powerful way with a client. She's given me permission to share her name. So she was an empty nester. She was at this certain stage in her life and looking at what was next and starting to build this new business. And she was describing to me what she wanted and who she was stepping into. And I said, I think you need to become Nikki Unleashed. And she was like, oh my God. And her eyes lit up and she was so excited. And so this name, Nikki Unleashed, became her sort of mantra. It became her, when we really fleshed out who is Nikki Unleashed, and she started to embody that in her life, and her life started to change so much more rapidly. And this is what I see again and again and again is when you go to, instead of how do I get what I want, when you go to who am I when I'm getting what I want, or who is the version of me that has the life that I desire, and you start to embody that version of you now, it's just really powerful. So there's often, though, this period I wanted to chat about of being in the mush, and I call it being in the mush before you come out of your cocoon. So whether this is something you're choosing or something life is sort of choosing for you or thrusting upon you, when we are going through these rebirth cycles, a lot of times there's this period, and it can be weeks, it can be months, it can be sometimes even years, hopefully not, where you feel like I have no idea where I'm going. Like none of it feels clear. I just know something isn't working about where I've been, or I'm feeling the call to something more, but nothing really feels clear. I can't seem to see what's on the other side of all of this. And that's where my first big death and rebirth cycle, when I stepped into coaching and I really reinvented myself, that process took a couple of years. I was really stuck in that for a long time until you, Gigi, helped me get clarity and step out of it. So that was my first experience. And then a couple of years ago, I went through another cycle like this, a different one, where I really changed the way that I was approaching my life and my work. But that time it was so much faster. I was only in it for a few months before I really broke through to the other side and felt like, oh, I'm emerging, right? I can see where I'm going and what this is all about. And I realized, oh, by knowing the steps that are happening here, it can speed up the process and you don't have to get stuck there for so long. There is a way to actually move through this with more ease and more, just more awareness as you're going through it. So that's a lot of what I love to talk about here. And I'm actually doing a masterclass next week. If you guys are listening to this live or right when it comes out or sometime close to now, it's called the Rebirth Masterclass. And so if you're curious about that, it's totally free. You can go to www.rebirthmasterclass.com. And I'm actually going to walk you through all the different stages of transition and how do you know when you're in a rebirth or a reinvention and how do you navigate through that more quickly. But I also think it's really fun to share stories. So Gigi, we started this episode out with you and you being the queen of reinvention. So our listeners can kind of hear these stories and go, like, how would I like to transform? So what are some examples, Gigi, of times when you have reinvented yourself?
Oh boy, if I think about like when I first started on my journey of being a single mom and working in corporate America and shifting to discovering having that moment where I was in that seminar and I watched the way people were worked with, and I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to do this. And so that transition of for the next few years, really stepping into my work as a coach and as a trainer, it was a huge, huge rebirth. That was probably one of the biggest rebirths of my life. And I completely changed my life, completely changed the person I was. Sometimes when I go back and I meet people or see people from that time, I can't even remember that person. She was so, so different. I mean, elements of me, of course, were the same in my heart and my soul, but who I was and the woman I stepped into was so much more of a powerful person, so much more connected to who I was or who I am, and just really going for my life in such a way where before I had no idea what I wanted. And so when I stepped into this new life, I went for my dreams that I didn't even know I had back previously. So that was one of my big ones. Yeah, one of my very
I feel like though there were elements when you tell me stories from your childhood or your teen years, like there were elements of that in you. They just hadn't been actualized yet.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's another thing that I noticed when I go back and I see people from 40 years ago, whatever. And same thing, they share certain pieces of me that I'm always really surprised because I think they're things that I developed later in my life, but they reflect back to me that that's who I was. And you're right on. I think when we go through these evolutions of death and rebirth, of course, we take those very important raw pieces of ourselves if we really grow and develop into this new person.
I think the context is instead of fixing or changing yourself, it's revealing your true self, more of your true self.
Yeah. And I always say evolving yourself, like that evolution of you growing into more of who you are, basically. So yeah, that was one of them. The other one was after I had spent several years, started doing trainings and was coaching, but hadn't really learned the money game so well yet, and moved to Austin and then had this opportunity to start really, really going for building an international coaching business. And one of the things that I did is I completely changed from living on Maui, where you could wear your flip-flops and your shorts everywhere, to going to Austin, to completely dressing in a different way and starting to buy beautiful clothes. And the first thing I did, we didn't even have a credit card back then. We got our first credit card. And I went and I bought these expensive dresses, which you have now, right, McKenna? These sequins dresses.
Yeah, they're so pretty. They're vintage.
They're very vintage, yeah. And I wore these to evening classes because when the women would come in these beautiful shoes, they would all be like, oh my gosh, you look beautiful. And it was just crazy to be wearing these kind of sequence dresses. But it got everyone's attention and the women were so curious. And
picture this, just for our audience's sake here. You sign up for an evening workshop, a couple of hours or 3 hours. You have no idea, $20. This is in the 90s, right? Something like that, early 90s. So you have no idea what you're signing up for because coaching is not a thing yet. And you come and you show up and there's Gigi in her full on sequin dress. I mean, beautiful, very, very bold and fun and outrageous. And then sky high heels. This is how I remember Gigi as a kid a lot of the time. And, what must they have thought, right? They were like, wow, who is this? What's happening here?
They were like, I want to be part of this. So
yeah. Absolutely. It's so fun.
Yeah. So that was a reinvention. That's where I really stepped into business and learning how to grow a business. And I completely, again, I evolved into more of who I was. As I earned more, I bought beautiful clothes. I just felt good. And I changed my image in that way. I worked out all the time. Before that, I had not been working out at all. So it was a very different piece of me and a very important part of me, because that was like my next evolution to who I was becoming.
And sometimes the outer image is an element of reinventing yourself. It's not everything. It's also an internal transformation, of course, first and foremost, but having our external selves transform as well can really anchor in that change. So the way you dress, the way you act and interact with people, those are really important components sometimes as well.
Yeah, and I think another anchor, which you do all the time, which is like the Nikki Unleashed, is when people describe it in a name, they name it for themselves. Because when you wake up in the morning, then if I think I'm Nikki, okay, I'm Nikki. But if I think, oh yeah, I remember I'm Nikki Unleashed, then how?
She's going to listen to this episode and be laughing.
Then how am I going to approach my day? Another big one for her, remember, was like easeful Nikki, when she got
easeful goddess.
Easeful goddess, right? When she got that, she wanted to be more easeful in her life and everything. So those names, I think, are very important and pivotal also for us to step into someone else.
Yeah,
really
some of mine that I've had are Audacious Eve was one of my personas, or one of my avatars, as I call it, that I stepped into a few years ago. And that was really a time when I was starting to grow the coaching business and put myself out there more and speaking more. And I remember I realized that I still had this way in which, even though I was being courageous, I was still a little like, I don't know, when I would get up on stage, I'd feel a little uptight still, or a little controlled, or I was trying to hold it all together. And I just thought, I just want to be audacious. I want to be sort of out of control in a good way, and like bold and just totally authentic in me. And so I created this name, this avatar of Audacious Eve, and I really stepped into and got to embody that avatar. And now she's just a part of who I am. And then I've had many, many others. I've had more recently, the effortless time weaver, where I've been learning and practicing new ways to move through time to really release the last bits of any stress or anything like that around there's not enough time, and learn to move through it in a different way. And so I get to create these avatars and then embody them, start embodying them now, and then the transformation just happens in my life as a result. So the names are really, really fun.
They're really fun. I remember when you did the Audacious Eve, and then the first night that you taught a class and you like embodied her, and you called me and you were like, oh my gosh, I was so out there and audacious and bold. And
I was like making jokes. I was like jumping across the stage, so to speak, which was really my living room. I mean, I was just hilarious, and I am not hilarious normally. So I was like, who is this person? And like, where did she come from? But it just came from the intentionality of, this is who I am. This is who I'm stepping into. So Gigi, I know you have one more story to share about when you moved to New York City. This is later in your career. Do you want to share that one as well?
Yeah, so this was 2001, I think, after the terrorist attack, actually. I moved to New York, and we all moved to New York at that time. And the thing that for me then is it was also very much of a crisis time for me. I'd left my marriage, I left my business, and I was really reinventing myself. And I decided when I went to New York that I was going to like get out and live life. And I love New York City. It was an exciting city. So the environment for me also really worked. And I changed myself. Remember, I worked out, and you were a kid, but worked out like crazy, got super fit. I just became this person, super social. I would go out, meet friends. Every time I went to a bar, a restaurant, or whatever, I would make a commitment to myself to talk to like 3 people. I dated so many men in New York City, had so much fun.
That sounds like fun.
It was so much, had so much fun, and just a different part of me came out. And at that time, I hadn't written a book or anything. And I remember telling people I'm going to write a book and have a television show. Like, part of me, there was a lot of pain that I went through previously, but when I went to New York, it was also liberating. It was the first time in a long, long time, like I really I saw I have to create my life and see what I want. And it was such an exciting time. I also was doing work at JP Morgan Chase during that time, leading women in how to advance in the company. So it was just a fascinating, fun time. And I had this amazing clothing store, and I would just call the guy. He knew what I looked good in, and I would say, can you pull together an outfit for this party? And he would do it. And so it was, I don't know, it was just an incredible time in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember running in Central Park with you, and such a fun energy at that time. Like you're saying, it was a time of, I think moving is often for people, if you move to a new place, you can reinvent yourself because maybe you don't know very many people, or maybe you don't know anyone. And so it's a fun way to, or a fun opportunity to totally rediscover or reinvent who you are at that stage. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Do you have any other stories?
Well, I mean, I've told these stories many times, but I'll just touch on them again. And by the way, Gigi and I have a couple of episodes much earlier in the podcast. If you want to scroll back ever and listen to kind of our full stories, we don't go super deep in a lot of the episodes, but there's one on Gigi's story and one on my story. But I'll just talk briefly about these kind of death and rebirth cycles that I mentioned earlier in the episode, which the first one was 2018, when I was having anxiety and panic attacks and just really feeling exhausted and burned out in my work in marketing. I had a 6-figure career and doing really well, but it was something, my body was telling me something. And I struggled, as I mentioned, for a couple of years to get clear on what that was. And you helped me really to see that there was something more I was being called to. You asked me questions, and I started to see, like, deep down, I really wanted to make this change. I really wanted to step into coaching. And so my rebirth and my reinvention there was when not only did I change careers, and that was a transition process over 8 months before I could fully let go of my marketing business. And it took a while to really build, but not only was I reinventing myself in that sense and the work I was doing and how I presented myself to the world, and coming from behind the scenes in businesses to really being out in the front, but I also chose to move at that time. I moved across the country from San Diego to Austin, right in that same window. And it actually, I think, was important because, like I was just talking about, that shift in who I was around and everything else allowed me to sort of make this change more effectively. I think if I had been around my friends as much as I loved them at that time, I would have seen myself in an old light, and it would have been, not that it's not possible, it just would have been a little more challenging for me. So it worked out, and I made the change into coaching, and I came alive, and the anxiety went away and the panic attacks went away, and I loved the work I was doing. And that really lasted for a couple of years. It was hard work getting the business going, but I loved it and still love it. And then in 2022, so about 2 years later, I had some health issues pop up. So growing the business and running our certification and doing a lot of different things, and some health issues started to pop up, and it just kind of stopped my world. Thankfully, it was nothing life-threatening or serious in that way. But I remember having another conversation with you, Gigi. As you guys can probably tell, she's the one I go to about this stuff always. I'm like, help, what's happening? What do I do? So we had a very deep heart-to-heart conversation. And again, through you really asking me questions, I got to see that this time it wasn't the work I was doing that was needing to change. It was the way that I was working. I had some patterns I had carried with me of getting stuck in the go mode and the just overworking and overextending myself. And so I really went through this process. It took about 6 months of reevaluating and shifting the way that I moved through not only my work, but also my life. I saw that I really, at that time, I think the woman I was stepping into at that time was the grateful creative conduit. It's a very long name, but for me, it was like feeling like this creative being that was just this conduit for what wanted to flow through me from my higher self or God or the universe, and really feeling like I was just fully in service to that and surrendered to that, and that I didn't have to push or be in that old go mode energy as much anyway, right? So those were my two big death and rebirth cycles that I often talk about. But recently I've actually been going through another big up level. And it's interesting because I'm about to lead this rebirth masterclass next week. And always, I think when we are going to lead these things, it's like anything that we get to look at to show up and really share comes up. And so I've been going through this up level, but it feels really different this time because the line I've been saying is this aha moment for me was I don't need the pain to rise. Like I don't need the pain in order to transform myself, in order to reinvent myself, because life is really good. And not that there's not challenges, of course there are, but I've been in this really great place where I'm happy and I'm fulfilled and I'm not overworking and I have a lot of flow. And there's so many things that I love, love, love about my life. And that was always true, but there's not sort of this feeling of my back up against a wall like there was with both of these other reinventions. And so that's something I'm really talking about in this masterclass is like, not only when you're going through a death and rebirth that really is through the challenge or the pain or the whatever that is, but also when things are really good, but you feel that call, like there's more, right? There's something more that I want that I'm stepping into. So those are really my stories.
Yeah, I love that. And I like that point about you don't have to have pain. And I think those of you that are listening, you can really look at what's some way that you're feeling called to maybe evolve or, like you said, become a different version of yourself. You feel it, you're sensing it in yourself. And I think that's what your masterclass is about, right? It kind of is really tapping into what that is. But then also doing it as simple, like we talked about, is choosing that name and living up to that name for a while, because that can be your guidepost right there. That can be the exciting thing that moves you forward, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. And no matter what kind of death and rebirth, right? I'm going to talk about all of the above because it might be that there's the challenge or the pain, right? You might be in a career pivot, a job loss, a divorce, a career pivot on purpose. Maybe that is more the bigger dream of I want a different kind of career or I want to start this business, or you're in a business and it's feeling a little stagnant and you're not sure why. And you're like, I want to break through to that next level, but that next level doesn't feel like just an extension of what you're doing now. It feels like something needs to shift or change here. In my experience, those kinds of feelings are usually that it's you that gets to shift and change. You get to reinvent yourself and by extension, the other parts of your business, your life, what have you. So like you're saying that as a takeaway for just this episode, I think feeling into what is the evolution that I'm in, what is the reinvention I'm feeling called to, and who would that version of me be that already is there, right? Already has stepped into this new chapter fully, and give her a name. I think that's a super fun takeaway for you guys.
Yeah, because like you said, the change can either come from outside or you can actually choose to reinvent yourself, which is, so much more fun from my experience.
Definitely. Yeah. And this can also be, I'm stepping into my era of motherhood. That's a reinvention. I'm not pregnant yet. Everybody keeps asking me, but that's going to be my next evolution as well, a part of it. Or some people, they're becoming empty nesters or they want to transform their personal style. So whatever that is, it's really important to choose, what do you want this to mean for you? Like this reinvention, it doesn't have to be what anyone else says it needs to be. As I step into motherhood, how do I want to navigate that? What does that mean to me? Not what does everybody else say that means, right? Or I need to be. Same thing if you're making a shift in your career or whatever it is, it's really, don't get stuck on what other people say or other people do. This is an internal process of discovering, who are you stepping into? What is this reinvention? If you're in the mush right now and you're just like, I have no idea, I cannot even see this, then that's a really great time. Also, that's why I'm hosting the masterclass to go deeper, is because we'll walk you through all the steps that'll give you the roadmap to know, okay, this is where I am in the journey. This is where I go from here. Because I think the only thing that's certain in life is change, right, Gigi?
Yeah.
Things don't stay the same.
Yeah. From one day to the next, right?
Yep, absolutely. So hope these stories.
on and on about this topic, right? It's a topic that we love. And not only do we love it because we love sharing it, but also we love it because we love doing it. It's so much of what I think both of us are always looking to see, how do we evolve? It's just this incredible sense for me, always of curiosity of like, how do I want to shift next? When for me, I'm going into my third act, or I guess I'm already there. And same thing, there's a way of, like you said before, I could listen to what everybody else says and the way people think of this time of life, or I can create it to what I want it to be. So I'm always looking, and I haven't quite seen yet, but I'm looking to see what is the way I want to be in my third act, that it doesn't have to be the agreement of, oh, I'm just getting older or something. Yeah.
So your third act, just for people who don't know, is what exactly?
That's really, I think, after 65. Yeah.
Third big chapter in life.
Third big chapter in life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that idea of really looking at how do you want to define that and not buying into what other people say. And I do want to say this one last thing, which is there are cycles in life, and these are natural cycles of what I call cocooning and butterfly time. Cocooning and butterfly time. And so if you're in the mush, that is a cocooning time. That is a time when you're in the middle of it. Doesn't mean you need to stay stuck or stagnant. You can actually move through that relatively quickly. But it does mean it is this time where things are a little more, what's the word, like amorphous maybe, or like just not, you don't have that like clear picture, clear thing you're moving forward yet. And then there are these times where we emerge from the cocoon as that butterfly, as that next version of ourselves. And there is that clarity. And it sounds like, Gigi, you're a little bit in the cocoon still of what is the third act going to be for you, and who are you going to be, and how do you want to navigate this? And then there will come a point at which you fully break through and you're like, woohoo, I'm a butterfly, baby.
My blue butterfly wings. Yes.
Yep. There you go. So wherever you are on the journey, it's perfect. Be kind to yourself. Hopefully this gives you some inspiration. This is part of our tagline for the Way of the Muse, is become the woman you're meant to be and confidently create your biggest dreams. So this is a part of the become the woman you're meant to be part. So one more time, in case you missed the URL earlier, it's www.rebirthmasterclass.com. If for any reason that one doesn't work, we sometimes have an issue with our link forwards. It would be www.mckenasage, MAKENASAGE.com/rebirth-masterclass. So that's the long version, but hopefully the link forward will work for you as well. All right. Hope to see you there. And thanks for listening. As always, please rate, subscribe, share, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Gigi.
Thank you, McKenna.
If you enjoyed this episode and you're curious about diving deeper, you will love The Collective, our monthly membership program. Think of this as the group of girlfriends you always wish you had, plus the coaching and support to step into the woman you're meant to be and the life and success you've been dreaming of. It includes powerful courses, live connection and coaching calls, and a community of like-minded women around the world, plus lots of other incredible bonuses. Every 8 to 10 weeks, we begin a new season focused on a topic like self-love, stepping into your bigger purpose, breaking through fear and self-doubt, or growing your success with more ease and flow. You can join the monthly membership for just $197 or sign up for the year and get an all-access course pass and enjoy huge savings on your annual membership. Learn more at wayofthemuse.com/collective. That's our episode for today, but let's not make it the end of our love story. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and think of some women in your life you'd love to share it with. And if you want to learn more about our events and programs, visit wayofthemuse.com. See you next time.